want to connect to Torah? You want to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You want to prepare yourself to Chag Matan Torah? This is what you need to do.
Wherever you get your podcasts from, or our own website, prismoftorah.org. This is The Prism of Torah with Rabbi Asaf Aaron Prisman.
Shalom Avracha. In this week's Parshas Bamidbar, I want to share with you a Dvar Torah based on what the Nesivos Shalom says in one of his pieces, and the Mitzvah Shalom connected to Shavuos as well. We know that the Parsha starts Vayidaber Hashem and Moshe Bamidbar Sinai Bo'el Moed, etc. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu all these important things, where it seems like it's very important for the Torah to tell us that it's happening in the desert. More than that, I'll emphasize the question. Hare, the whole Parsha is called, and the whole Sefer is called Bamidbar. So there obviously is some internal strong message. The fact that the Torah was given in a desert, in the Midbar. What is that message? So, if we look carefully, there's a famous Midrash Rabbah. The Midrash Rabbah says, why was the Torah given in Midbar Sinai? And the Midrash Rabbah says, from here we learn that the Torah was given through three things. And it quotes psukim to prove it. One is through fire, one is through water, and one is through the desert. If you look in the Midrash, it says all these three have in common that everyone can get a hold of these things. They don't cost money. You can get water, you can make a fire, you can go to the desert. No one owns a desert because the desert it's very difficult to plant there. The Midrash then goes on to say that there's another intrinsic idea about the desert, and that is just like a desert is hefker and everyone can go to it, so too we have to learn from here that in order to connect to the Torah, a person has to give up of himself to the Torah, mafkir himself to the Torah. We can still ask the question, what is the unique common denominator between these three? That through these three the Torah was given, fire, water, and the desert. The Nesivos Shalom says an unbelievable idea, a very deep idea that I think we can all connect to, and based on his idea we can perhaps prepare ourselves better for the Heilige Chag of Shavuos, the Chag that we connect to the Torah, the Chag that we're all yearning for and we're counting the days towards during Sfiras HaOmer until we reach Shavuos. And that is, these three things, or at least fire and water, and the Midbar, they represent Koichos HaTumah, the way that we connect, or potentially connect, to impure things, to Tumah. Fire represents the strength of the yetzer that's burning inside of us like a fire trying to trick us and give us a taiva to do certain actions. Even just externally, we want to do a certain action. The yetzer, the evil inclination, is pushing us to do these physical acts that on the surface seem to give us physical pleasure. That's fire. Water, as Chazal teach us, represents Midas HaChesed, represents the idea of friendship, of love. It's an internal connection to something. It's the Midah, in Hebrew it's called in Lashon HaKodesh Tshuka, when you really internally yearn to connect to something. And that is the Midah where Ahava, love, comes from. And the desert, it represents, why is it connected to Koichos HaTumah? The idea behind the desert, that it's hefker. Everyone can go and grab a piece of the desert. So too, a person can sometimes, with Koichos HaTumah, he totally, even if it doesn't make sense what he's doing, he's totally mafkir himself and is allowing himself to do anything to do with Tumah. Okay, fine, I'll do that if you guys are doing it, I'll join you, even though he himself, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says this, he himself realizes what he's doing is wrong, but it doesn't matter. He says, you know what, I don't care what I think, I'll go with whatever the Tumah is telling me to do. Says the Nesivos Shalom, all these three koichos are actually neutral, and even though they're a lot of times associated with Tumah, impurity, but the tafkid of a yid to connect to Hashem and Torah is to take dafka these things, and as we always say, elevate them. Leverage off of these potentially koichos and use them to connect to Hashem and the Torah. We'll start off with the fire that we said. The fire is you have a strong urge to do a physical act. That strong urge you have to manipulate and you have to channel to connecting to Hashem and the Torah. Wanting to connect to Talmidei Chachamim, wanting to learn Torah, realizing that is what life is all about. Water, this internal connection to something, a deep connection, like the Rambam says. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, 10th perek, Avas Hashem tzricha liot kechole choli ava, like someone that is lovesick, that has this internal yearning, hishtoikekus to Torah. We're supposed to channel this idea that water represents eternal love, connection to Torah. And also the desert represents this idea of that we're totally willing to immerse ourselves, mafkir ourselves to Torah. Whatever the Torah says, we'll do. It's through these things that Torah was given to teach us. You want to connect to Torah? You want to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You want to prepare yourself to Chag Matan Torah? This is what you need to do. You need to channel these three things, these three concepts, to connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Torah. This way, we'll be able to maximize our potential in connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Shavuos is a special day for that. But of course, the Sfira we're doing, Sfiras Oimer, is helping us prepare to get rid of the tumah we had in Mitzrayim. Each one has Mitzrayim within him. And now we have to remove each layer of that, day by day, until we get to Shavuos. To connect to the Torah, a person needs to mentally be willing to give up on the physical pleasures of life and do anything he can to connect to Torah. Pirkei Avos, Chazal tell us, a person that really wants to connect to Hashem and Torah, he should be willing to accept upon himself that if push comes to shove, use minimum from this physical world, just pas bemelach, just bread and salt, and that's all he'll have. Says Reb Chaim Volozhin, doesn't mean you have to do that. It means you're willing to do that if push comes to shove and you'd have no other opportunity, because you realize that you're here, your neshama came here for this purpose. Now, of course, we should tap into the gashmis of this world, but only, as we always say, based on the Mesilas Yesharim, only to use it for our avodas Hashem, to get closer to Hashem, to connect to Torah. So if you need that cup of Coke, yes, have it if it helps you learn Torah. But just for the sake, just as an end to have the Coke, just to have money, no. Money in order to connect more to Hashem, to do more chesed, to do mitzvahs, which is why our neshama came down here, to do a tikkun. For that, yes, because you're elevating the physical, and hence it becomes spiritual as well. And that is what these ideas represent, and that's why the Torah was given through these things, Esh, Maim, and the Midbar, and that is why it was so imperative that the whole Chumash, the whole Sefer is called Bamidbar, to drill in this idea that we should be mafkir ourselves to the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is a true kinyan to the Torah and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, if a person only cares about himself and his physical pleasures in the world, he disconnects to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Baal Shem Tov, based on a pasuk, an unbelievable hint, remes to this idea. The pasuk says, Anoichi oimed ben Hashem uveinechem. Literally that means, it's talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I am standing between, Anoichi is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm standing between Hashem and between you, Klal Yisrael. But there's also a hint in this pasuk, and as we know, the Torah is given through Pardes. There's different ways of understanding the Torah. Shivim panim la Torah. Says the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, unbelievable mahalach. Anoichi represents also us, our physical drive. That is what is standing between us and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because our neshama is what connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if we feed to our physical pleasures, physical drives, that is what splits us. And that is what causes a barrier between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This reminds me, Rav Davidovich told me this idea, this story, about Rav Orlowik, Zichrono Levracha, who was Rosh Yeshiva of Esh HaTorah. And when he was a kid, his father explained to him, you're now becoming a bar mitzvah. And now you're going to have also yetzer tov on top of the yetzer hora. And it'll always be a constant fight. It's like two lions that are continuously fighting with each other. So Rav Noach Orlowik asks his father, and who wins? And who's going to win? So his father answered him, whoever you feed more. You feed the yetzer hora, like the Gemara in Sukkah says, that the more you feed the yetzer hora, he's not going to get satisfied. He's never going to get full. He's going to get more hungry. And hence, whoever you feed more, he's going to win. And that's what we're saying here. You feed your yetzer hora, you're creating more and more barriers between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we now are working our way towards Shavuos, we have to realize and recalibrate ourselves what life is all about. And that we have to use all the koiches that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. This idea of fire, of a certain drive and excitement for something. That excitement should be channeled to Kedusha, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah. Internal connection, which is what water represents, chesed, love, being lovesick, that you can't control yourself. You just want to connect to something internally because you have a deep bond with something. That we should have with Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the mitzvahs. And to totally give up of ourselves, that also should be channeled to Kedusha, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah. So much to say about this topic, but before I'll end with a mashal, I just want to say that the Nesivos Shalom also brings this point and says, of course, these three things will only have a proper effect if we do it consistently. As we all know, the more consistent you are, the more it has an effect. It's not going to help just to do it once in a blue moon. And that is also hinted by fire and water. As we know, the famous story with Rabbi Akiva, the Chazal tell us that the reason he totally changed was the fact that he saw water drip, drop by drop on a stone. And he did a kal v'chomer, and he said to himself, wow, the stone is so strong. It's a solid, and yet this liquid thing penetrates through the rock. Whoa, you see what consistency can do. If that is true, then for sure Torah can penetrate through my heart. Because we know Divrei Torah, Chazal tell us, is like a metal, kebarzel. For sure they'll be able to carve into my heart, which is just flesh and blood. And hence he went back to learn Torah. But of course, it's not going to help to throw a lot of water in one shot on a rock. That's not going to make any hole. It's only the continuous, even if it's just a drop by drop. That continuity, that consistency will make all the difference. And that is the hint also in water. It's based on the consistency. Same as with fire. Fire, you can put something on the fire. It could be a strong fire. If you put it for 2 seconds, it's not going to do the job. But even if it's a small fire, but it continuously is put on for more than 1 second, it will have an effect. Same is true with Avodas Hashem. You don't have to have a big fire at the beginning. You can have a small fire. 1 drop of water. But if we do it drop by drop and continue, the spark of fire will have an effect and we'll be able to grow and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is what we should put our mind and actions to as we prepare for the Heilige Day of Shavuos, which represents connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His Torah. This perhaps is also hinted in the idea that we have to count 7 full weeks. Sheva Shabbatos Temimois Tiena. Complete. We need a completion. We need consistency as we lead and count towards Shavuos. I want to end with a famous mashal, the Magid Medubno, that perhaps shows this idea that you have to give up of yourself in order to be compatible and connect to the Torah and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is, a person comes, doesn't have much money, is a poor person, he saves a gold coin every day until after a year of saving, he finally goes to a store that he always has walked home and sees the store, and he sees in the fancy window a suit he's been yearning to buy. Finally, with his rags, he collects all the money he saved up the whole year, goes into the store and asks the person in charge who works there, please, I want a suit like this. Can you find me the right size? Do you know the right size for me? He says, of course, I work here. I know, this is my job. He takes out the perfect suit for him, or so he claims, and he goes, right here, sir. Are you sure you can afford it? Because he saw the rags he was wearing. Yes, I can afford it. I saved up for this. He goes to change, puts it on. It doesn't fit. It's so tight, he can barely walk. And he goes up to the person working there and says, you fool, I thought you know what you're doing. You work here. You couldn't give me the right size. This is way too small on me. And the person working there says, you're the fool. This fits you perfectly, but it's only going to fit you if you remove your rags. This won't fit with your rags. Says the Magid Medubna, the Nimshal is us connecting to the Torah. We know that the Torah is a spiritual garment for us. There is 613 mitzvahs split to 248 mitzvahs aseh, and Shesa, 365 lo taseh, keneged rimach evarim, and Shisa gidim, which is what the physical body is composed of. And if you want it fit, you have to remove all the tumah, and that is exactly the work we're doing. We have to remove the tumah, prepare to be spiritual and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on this Heilige Day so the Torah can fit us and we can be compatible with the Torah. And perhaps that's another idea of why there's a very big minhag to go to the mikveh on Shavuos, also before Shavuos, but also before Shachris, Yiratzoin, that we'll all prepare ourselves on our level to be more spiritual in a consistent way and use all these koichos that Esh Maim in the Midbar represents, connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have a good Shabbos and a good Yom Tov.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Ellie Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.